those troubleshooting things that y'all showed, the controllers and whatnot, for most people, in my opinion, even on a contractor level, they don't know. So there's been a lot of gold nuggets here that people can grab from. I hope that they've gained as much as I have, because some of the things has been eye-opening for me too.
Whether it's full-blown variable speed or just set speeds, doesn't matter. But the permanent split capacitor compressors are going to go bye-bye, in my opinion, because it's been proven that the electrically communicated motors, which is what ECM is definitely more efficient. It's already happened in furnaces.
Right.
You can't buy a furnace with a permanent split capacitor motor in anymore because they can't meet the efficiencies. The same thing's going to happen with compressors. It's just a matter of time. Welcome everyone to another Talking Comfort Live. It's April 8th. I'm Greg Bruntz, National Commercial Technical Support Specialist. Wow, we got a full house today, including a special guest. So let's get right to it, get everybody introduced, and we'll run with the show. Daniel, you're up. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Good afternoon, everybody. Daniel Hamrick. I am Sales Director, Manager for the East Coast region, and coming to you from Syracuse, New York today.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jesus Fraga. I'm the Technical Product Manager here at Tradewinds. And Greg, that's supposed to be my line. I'm supposed to introduce Alex. We have a special guest with us. Alex, if you'll introduce yourself.
Hey everybody, my name is Alex Ivey. You can find me online at HVAC_tips. I'm a content creator. I'm an HVAC business owner and a technician. I've been in the trade for 20 years, and I do HVAC tips online, where I have about close to 250,000 followers.
Awesome.
Well, that's impressive.
Hey, Greg, I'll bring it back to you.
All right, sounds good. All right, as always, we say if you're on the job right now and have a question, please call our tech line, 888-850-7928. Otherwise, don't forget to submit your questions at any time using the question mark icon to the right. We'll be checking throughout the show. Daniel, you want to lead us on through?
Yeah, just a few notes. You'll be able to see the agenda on the screen throughout the show, which we will mostly adhere to if we can. So we'll have a time limit on ourselves to keep things rolling. So these topics, and we'll mostly adhere to that if possible. Questions throughout, we'll be looking at the questions and getting to those as time permits, but we will pause our countdown so we can make sure to take time to answer your questions and get everything in today that we've got planned. So, Jesus?
Yeah, of course. So if you're watching on demand, we have timestamps in the description. Feel free to jump to different segments of the show. Let us know in the comments what more you'd like to learn. And remember, if you want to ask questions live, you need to register from our website at greecomfort.com/GREE training. All right, so let's start talking comfort. So, Alex, before we get into the first session, I did want to bring up, you were a runner-up, right, in the Service Titan HVAC installation. Is that correct?
Yeah. So last year, I competed in the HVAC National Championship, the Service Titan HVAC National Championship, and I got second place. It's a national competition. It was a lot of fun, and I won $15,000. So that's always
that's
wow.
Pretty, yeah. So the only reason I'm bringing this up is for our distributors and everything, kind of get to know you a little bit more. So I mean, what'd you do in that show? Was it like installation based, service based?
So, every year it's a little bit different, but this past year they actually had a very technical setup for troubleshooting.
Oh,
they brought in all different kind of tools and measurements. They put it on a TV display, and they said, "What's wrong with this system?" So you just look at all the numbers, and of course, there's a brazen competition, there's a knowledge base, and then that's the final round where you're doing technical and installation stuff.
Right.
But it encompasses everything in HVAC, I think.
Cool, man.
So after taxes, you got $5, right?
Hey, man, I had that money spent before it got here.
There we go.
That's always the way.
Well, I mean, at a national competition level like that, that's pretty impressive. That's awesome. So, just helps with the content you're putting out there that the industry, right? So, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, it is really cool, man. I appreciate it. It's I think everyone should try.
For sure.
Well, awesome. All right. So let's y'all ready to start our first topic?
Yep.
Yep.
So in my bag essentials. So in this segment, we're going to go down the line and each share the 1 or 2 or 3 HVAC tools we can't live without. While we're doing that, our viewers can send in their tool or tools of choice using the question mark, and we'll share your guys' comments, whether it be the zip ties, knee pads, or even your patience. Hit the question button on the top right of the screen. Send it our way. Jesus, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, of course. So, just starting off with the essentials on the tools, I think back of whenever I was on the field, and honestly, I kind of really shot myself in the foot because it took me a while to get these 2 really critical tools. So the first one is a flaring gauge. And I mean, we all know, if you don't have that flaring gauge, what happens? What do you do to test that, flare against some pressure, right? You go ahead and you pressurize it, and then you figure out that it's, slowly leaking or extremely leaking, and you just get that hiss sound, and then you go to the old dreaded process of doing it all over again, cutting it off, and reflaring, and then hoping that you made a good quality flare that's gonna hold. So for sure, first the flaring gauge, and my other recommendation would definitely be an EEV mag. It's not necessarily a single tool because they usually come in kits, right? So EEV mag, what it is it's a magnet, a donut magnet. I'm not sure if we have a picture of it, but you pretty much put it on EEVs or solenoids, and you can manually test if they are actually functional, right? See if they open and close. And we actually have a short video, pre-recorded video of Daniel actually demonstrating that EEV mag. So we'll play that for you guys here after a while. But those are my tools that I think, for sure, especially if you're doing mini splits or even VRF, are really critical in having as far as installation and if you're doing any type of repair work. So I don't know if you guys have any other tools that you would recommend to anybody out there.
Well, let's go ahead.
Daniel, I wanted to bring this up real quick because you and I did it together with the power flaring tool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how you go from a 3/8 to a 5/8 flare. If you don't adjust that tool, your flare is completely off. And we did that, and there's a video we did on that showing how far off it is with the flare gauge going from that smaller size to the larger size. But once you figure out your tool and kind of mark your adjustments, you know right where to go to. But I would still say every single flare, you guys should be checking with the flare gauge because, hopefully you don't end up with the phone call I had one time where the guy said, there's something wrong with this flare. It blew the flare completely. The indoor unit blew the flare completely out of the nut. And I'm like, there's only one way that happened. You didn't make the flare correctly. The flare shoulder wasn't big enough for it to blow the flare completely out of the flare nut. So, it's just absolutely critical to me that the flares are being made right. And I really, really, really like the power flaring tools, but you got to pay attention to whether they're adjusted right or not.
Yeah, having that flare gauge in your bag is essential. So
It only takes a few seconds to check it just to make sure it's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Alex, you got anything you want to add on there real quick before we run this video?
Essential tools in the bag, for me, I would have to have meters, nut drivers, and definitely some wire strippers. And I want to say this, I know that this is kind of funny, I guess, but the best tool a technician can have is his brain. If you keep that sharp, everything else can kind of fall into place, I think. A lot of technicians can make stuff happen with less tools than they typically have in a bind by being sharp with their mind. So,
well, you kind of made a good point there because your brain's what decides what tool you should have.
True.
So
Yep.
if it isn't sharp, you're gonna grab the wrong one. So Jesus, I don't know what you think, but I think we ought to go ahead and run that video.
Yeah, I think it's a good time to do it. Go ahead.
All right, let's do it.
Doing a little troubleshooting with the EV mag. What I noticed was there is Loctite on these threads. Taking a look at this one in particular, there was some inside, which I scraped out and kind of blew it out a little bit just for test purposes. I put about 100 psi pressure on the outdoor unit by itself. I shut these valves off, and then I cracked this one open. I did get some pressure out of it, and cracking this is B, this is A 1/4 inch port. So I cracked this one open and nothing's happening. So decided to take the unit apart, use the EV mag, and adjust the EV manually with the magnet to see if I get pressure out of either of these valves. You can hear the pressure coming out of this one as I turn this, and you can hear it stop as I turn it back closed. However, moving to this one, just make sure that my valve is open here. So it's all the way open, and spinning this should open and we get some pressure out of that A port, but it's not doing anything at all, spinning it either way. So I believe some of that Loctite that was used on the flares actually got into the EV and has locked up the piston inside there. So, all right.
You know what that EEV mag does for you, and when it's able to do whenever you're in a pinch and not really knowing what's going on with the system. Just to go a little bit more on that video. More than likely that system was, I'm pretty sure it's going to pump down or some kind of restrictions that the technician would see, and that would help them diagnose which one of those valves was not functioning right. And so I think it was a really good explanation on how crucial that tool can be for any technician out in the field. And well, we do have another tool which was already brought up, but it's not only, so the tool is it's a multimeter, right? But it's not just in your multimeter. We really want to have a multimeter that has the diode function capable, right? So what does that mean? So whenever we're talking compressors and compressor drive boards, obviously we get failures. They're just like any other component in the system. But how are you going to confirm whether the control board or the drive board is actually bad and not just the compressor, right? So that diode function on that meter is going to help you determine that, because I'm pretty sure everybody here has heard whenever they change out compressors, go ahead and do the board as well. Just blindly doing it just cause that's the standard. And really, that's not, me personally, I would never look at it that way. I would need to confirm whether that part is actually bad before I actually go ahead and replace it, because it doesn't make sense to replace something that's good and functioning just because an external component is bad, right? Which the external component being the compressor. So those three tools would be, for sure, three essential tools that I would make sure I would have on any type of service call that I ran in the past. I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that.
Actually, I do. In regards to your multimeter with the diode function. So if you look at pretty much any of the GREE service manuals that are telling you how to troubleshoot a drive board, whether it's one board and the drive section is built into it, or it's a separate drive board for the compressor, or a separate drive board for the fan motors, depending on what unit you're working on. If you're working on commercial VRF, a lot of them have a separate drive board for the compressor and a separate fan driver board for the fan motors. They're still inverter driven drive boards, okay? And the test that will show you in the service manual is exactly what Jesus was talking about. It's a diode test to tell you whether that driver is good or bad. You can do it also with ohms it's not as accurate as what the manufacturer is telling us. This is the way they want it tested, is using the diode test. So if you have step-by-step instructions of how to do that diode test in the service manual, and you're going to know for sure whether or not that drive board is good or bad by following the service manual and the steps it tells you to do. The other thing I can comment about with multimeters is, guys, please keep the instructions
Yes.
and make sure you know how to use your meter and you know what every single icon on that meter means and what resolutions you can set it to. I'm not speaking against all, but I've had many calls where I've actually had to pull up somebody's meter, pull up the instructions, and tell them how to use their own meter. So I'm not trying to say this is a stab or anything. I'm putting it out there as advice. It's your tool. You should know every aspect of that tool and exactly what that tool can do for you. If you don't know how, if you find things in that manual and it has test procedures of that meter that you're not sure what it means, then I would do some of my own research to determine when that would be useful to me and understand that part of that meter. The meter is only as good as the person that's operating it.
Just like
So,
Alex was saying, that most important tool
is
being the brain.
right?
Knowing how to use that multimeter.
But that was a really good point, Greg, because, you know, knowing how to use your tools is really important, because I know, for example, I've installed some GREE units, and they have really good helpful tools along the way, the stickers on the unit, and to tell you and explain things to you. But if you don't know how to use your tools, you know, like to just be more knowledgeable and to be a better technician, I think is a desirable trait. And it's not to put anybody down, but to help people up. You know, give them a hand up. People don't know the things they don't know. So, you know, by sharing that knowledge, you know, like on this podcast, that's a huge benefit to everybody.
Well, the more they know, the less work they're going to end up doing in the long run, because they're going to know exactly how to do the troubleshooting procedures, and then go to what Jesus was talking about, is we're only replacing the components we absolutely have to replace. We're not replacing components we don't need to replace.
Yeah,
just because we think you should change it, right? That's just adding more time to the job. So
exactly, yeah, 100%. You know, what's the matter? What's the reason behind having all these fancy gadgets if you don't even know, what to do with them?
right.
Yeah.
You know, there's no point in having all the latest touchscreen gauges, micron gauges, diode function meters, these high tech meters, if you don't even know what you have in your hands, right? So,
right. So we're going to move on here. I got a couple tools that I recommended that I think are very valuable to our customers out there that are installing single zone, multi-zone, mini splits, or our MultiPro series of equipment. So I have two tools listed. One is the GREG, G-R-E-G, T2A3AD. I didn't get that tool named after me. If that's what
I don't know
everybody's
how you
thinking.
pulled that
Yeah,
one
you
off,
did.
Greg.
Just
Thank
take the credit.
This guy humble.
But that tool, that's for our multi-zone and single zone mini splits. That tool you hook up to the 1, 2, 3 wires, which everybody's familiar with, whether it's single zone or multi-zone. And it's just a data monitor. What I hear all the time from technicians working on mini splits is they're like, hey man, it'd be really nice to be able to have a low side gauge when it's in cooling mode. Well, you have low side, I'm sorry. I meant low side gauge in heating mode,
heating mode,
because
right.
both lines are high pressure. So sorry, misspoke there. And then when you're in cooling mode, both lines are low pressure. So they want to know the opposite pressure. And I believe in that myself. You know, every system I ever worked on out in the field, other than mini splits, I always hooked up both gauges, high side and low side, so you can see both sides of the system. Well, the cool part about that tool is through the data monitoring, it does give you high pressure and low pressure. It gives it to you in temperature, and you got to use a pressure temperature chart to be able to convert it over to pressure, but it will absolutely give you your low pressure and your high pressure along with a ton of more information, like what your DC bus voltage is. It will give you what compressor speed is. It gives you your fan motor speeds. It gives you all your thermistor readings. So you can you don't have to test every single thermistor. You can look at the temperature readings they're giving you and try to validate whether or not they're correct, which most likely they are. But it'll give you your outdoor ambient, indoor ambient. It will give you your outdoor coil temperature, indoor coil temperature. There's a whole list of stuff that it gives you to be able to troubleshoot and diagnose that unit. Just like Alex, we were talking about Alex winning that competition. That's the data he was talking about. He's reading to be able to determine what's wrong with that unit. The more data you have, the easier it is to determine what's wrong with it, right? Well, that tool is going to give you all that information. On a one-to-one, it will give you the outdoor unit information and the indoor unit information. If you're working on a multi-zone with that tool, the only indoor unit information you're going to see is to the head you're connected to. So if you're connected to the A circuit, you're only going to see A indoor unit information. If you want to see B, you got to move the wiring over to B, run the unit, then you can see the outdoor and the B unit information. We do have a multi-zone tester, which is just a data logger where you could toggle through all the indoor units and see the outdoor. I don't recommend that one as much because it's a little harder to hook up. And there's also benefits to this tester that will work both single zone and multi-zone that tool does not have. The biggest call we get in technical support is the E6 communication error. That tool will allow you to simulate an indoor unit to test the outdoor unit and determine whether the outdoor unit is good and good for communication. The unit will actually run without an indoor hook to it. And then vice versa. We can use that tool on the indoor unit, simulate the outdoor unit, and make the indoor unit run. So you can very easily determine if the outdoor unit's good, the indoor unit's good. If both of them check out, you got a bad wire between them. If one of those checks out bad, now we know we got to dig into that one deeper. That's why I like that tool. I like that tool because it can do that E6 troubleshooting, and it can also give you all that data information you might be looking for all in one tool.
Hey, Greg, what was the name of that tool again?
It's Greg, Greg, T2, that's Tom 2, A is in Adam, 3, A is in Adam, D is in dog.
Okay. I just want to make sure I got it.
We also list them on our website. If you go under GREEcomfort.com, you go under the contractor tab, there's a tab there that tells you about the GREE service tools. Also, the second tool I recommended is the MultiPro service tool. That is the CE4224FC. I'll repeat that again. That's the CE4224FC. Now, that unit right there is only for MultiPro. You can't use it on multi-zone mini splits or single zone mini splits or the Flex. It's only for MultiPro, but it's also for commercial VRF. It's the same tool. That tool gives you all that same data that we'd be looking for in troubleshooting the unit. In other words, you can see your compressor speed, your indoor temperature, your outdoor temperature, indoor coil inlet coil temperature, outlet coil temperature, your outdoor condensing temperature, your pressures, high pressure, low pressure. That one will actually give you actual pressure, high and low pressures. I mean, it just gives you a laundry list of information to be able to diagnose that tool. If you want a fast way to diagnose a MultiPro unit, that is the fastest way, is having that service tool. I can't speak enough about it. I actually have one set up in my office. When guys call in and they have that tool, I have that tool so that I can go through it page by page with them and tell them what information I'm looking for to help them diagnose that unit. Because it's that important, that fast to be able to get all the information. Not only that, you have full unit control from that tool. You don't have to run around the whole building. If you got 8 indoor units connected to that unit, you can drive them all from right there. which saves you a ton of time. So I just can't speak enough about those two GREE-specific service tools. They are only for GREE units, but they're GREE-specific service tools. But I can't say enough about them. That they can save you a world of time out there on the job.
Hey,
I
Zeus, are
forgot
you
to
familiar with
mention.
those tools too?
Oh yeah, of course. I know the MultiPro tool that Greg is speaking on right now. That one is like literally anybody that does MultiPro or commercial VRF needs that tool. As much as commercial technical support that I've done, that's literally the first thing that I ask. All right, well, you got a service tool? 9 times out of 10 they don't, which is unfortunate. But I tell them exactly how to get it, and you can help them go through that service call, up to a point, right, until you actually need the service tool. Because if you don't have a service tool, you're kind of just guessing, right? You're kind of going this way, going outside, going inside, and then what if there's like 100 different heads, So for sure, the service tool for the MultiPro and the multi-zone mini split and single zone mini split service tools, those very critical pieces help you see internally what's going on versus just your pressure. You're hooking up your pressure gauges and taking amp readings, taking voltage readings. It'll give you a lot more information than just your basic service tool that you have on any typical service call. So highly recommend those for sure. Reach out to your distributors, and I'm sure they can have them in stock.
I'm glad that you mentioned.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm glad that you mentioned it because I didn't know that some of these tools even existed. I'll be honest with you and just put it out there. Like that's a big to do. Like I know that the reason I asked Greg and Jesus about it is because as a contractor, if I didn't know they exist, I'm sure there's others that don't either.
Exactly.
So it's good that you've had good experience with it, Jesus, because that I know Greg was talking about it, but I'm glad that there's multiple people that's had great success with it.
Yeah,
that's something that I'll be looking into getting too, because it helps me if it's going to help me diagnose the system easier, if it's one of the only ways, if not the only way to do it, and it's going to cut down stress in my life, that's what I want. I want as less stress, as easy of a job. Just call me old fashioned or lazy or something. I don't know, but I just want my job to be easy. And I think that tool does it.
Right.
Yeah, that single zone is really helpful. I actually hooked up accidentally put a 230 volt with a 115. Well, I'd already opened up the refrigerant, and so I was kind of stuck because it wouldn't run. So the service tool actually allowed me to turn that outdoor unit on to pump it back down. So
yeah, that's pretty good.
There you go. One more quick little comment. Jesus, what did I forget to mention about the MultiPro service tool?
Did you forget? Let's see. Oh man, you put me on the spot.
You can control the whole system.
You're the one that turned me on to it.
I'm sorry. I think this is it. So you can connect that portable service tool anywhere on the system, so you could be indoor or outdoor. I hope that's what you're talking about.
Well, that was one, but the other one was the fact that I mentioned on the mini split service tool, you can simulate an outdoor unit.
Oh, yeah.
You can also do that with the MultiPro tool. If you have an indoor unit that's malfunctioning, you can disconnect the comms going to the outdoor unit, hook that tool up, simulate the outdoor unit, and see if that unit's good or bad, or if you got a wiring problem.
Right.
Really? I didn't know that
on that
one.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's incredible.
Just another way to cut down, the diagnostics, right? You just quickly turn it on. If it's on, all right, it's outside. Or vice versa.
Like Alex said, make it easier.
I knew it was capable of it, just never done it. And then me and Jesus were down in the lab and we did it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool.
That's awesome.
So, anyway.
All right. Well, we are 12 minutes over our time on that one, which, hey, we're having fun. So on to the next topic, if y'all all agree.
Yep.
So
our next topic is tools on my wish list. So I'll let Greg kick it off here.
Wish list tools. If you have, what tools would you have with them if money and space weren't limited? Thermal camera.
I
That's
think a
cool
thermal
too.
cameras would be on my wish list.
So you know, I would add. I can't remember exactly what they're called, but I believe it's supersonic for leak detection, and they're a pair of headphones, and you put on the microphone, and it'll pick up any type of electronic noise, so help you locate leaks. Like for instance, if you got them in chases or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
the refrigerant piping. And I personally know that because I have a pair, and they are amazing. Um,
Oh, wow.
I don't know who the manufacturer, Accuratech, I believe is what it was. But those are really good, especially for finding those really small microscopic leaks that are barely coming out. Maybe you can't get them with soap bubbles, but I feel like those are really helpful.
Well, that thermal camera can also kind of lead you into where there's temperature change in a,
Yep.
and can also help you figure out where your refrigerant restriction might be.
Right.
It can
Because you
also
can,
help you determine if you got a faulty breaker that's running too hot.
That's true. Yep.
Well, I think what's so great about that thermal camera is, for one, I think it's great to be on a wish list because those things can be outrageously expensive. That's
yep.
definitely a wish. It's on my wish list too.
Well,
But
then once you,
the great thing about it is it's objective. You don't have to take my word for it. It's right here on the screen.
Right.
So as a technician in the field, that means a lot. And as a homeowner, I think it means a lot too.
right.
That's a good point.
You
The only
know,
bad part is as soon as you buy one, there's gonna be a better one coming out about a week later.
it'd be cheaper too. It'd be
That's
It's
true.
like big screen TVs.
No, but yeah, Alex, that's the downside of tools like that. The same thing with the ultrasonic ones that I have. They're pretty pricey, man. They're not cheap.
yeah. You
So
know,
another big one that would be on my list if I was still in the field and I was doing a lot of gas piping, a lot of gas furnaces and stuff would be a pipe threader.
Oh
I
yeah.
always wished I had a pipe threader with me.
Yep.
You don't
It's
have a
just
pipe threader?
not one that I carried around with me, no. So
I've been very fortunate. I've um I've got to use a lot of the latest and greatest tools. I've got to use, I don't know if y'all are aware, but Malco Edge has created a whole new line of refrigeration tools
Really.
that they just released. And
Was that part was that part of that one that you did on the hydraulic bender?
yes, they actually,
That was awesome.
that bender is amazing. Let me tell y'all, I know that there's plenty of different price points and plenty of different benders on the market, but this one operate very smoothly. It didn't like hurt my wrist. Man, I've been in the field a long time. I know my hair and stuff ain't all great, but my body aches. My wrist hurts, my knees hurt, and
yep.
everything. So that little bit of discomfort along the way throughout my day makes it a little bit easier and allows me to work a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so on that pipe bender, what do? You just like pull the trigger and then it just automatically does it?
Well, the it's hydraulic and the actual handle is just very easy. Some of the
Ah,
other hydraulics, they stick. Like you had to
yeah.
really, and then with this, you just turn the knob, it opens. You can close the handle a couple times, and it bends it. And then when you turn it, it releases the copper.
Mm,
Some of the other ones don't release it, and this one's just really smooth and easy.
right.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
we really are more manufacturer type support, so we really don't get as involved into the different stuff that's offered on the market. So Alex, I got a question for you. Maybe you've got a recommendation on a wish list. Totally not against them, but I know there's some good ones and there's some bad ones. But we constantly get asked about press fit.
Oh yeah.
So look, I have met with reps about press fit. Um, a lot of places, it's like for me, for example, I'm down south. We do a lot of brazing. A lot of the old school guys just love to braze that you couldn't get them away from it. But there's applications where press fittings are really needed for like fire alarms, smoke detectors, and all that kind of stuff in condos and that kind of scenario. There's just no way around it. I think that brazing is tried and true, but as a contractor, I can't help but to think that someone's not going to pull a good vacuum. Someone's going to get tired. I feel like it's easier on the press fittings. I feel like you'll get a better job with it, but I think the longevity and the quality of someone's braze is just it's top notch, man. If you weld that thing closed, you come back 15 years, that coil might be leaking, but that braze on that 90 ain't,
Yeah.
Well, that's my concern is because they bring up and they ask about press fit all the time, and we can't answer that question because we don't know, which ones are putting out really good quality press fit fittings that, they've got, umpteen million hours that they can tell you that it's going to hold for as long as it's done properly. Obviously, it's like anything else. I'm sure the installation procedure to doing that press fit is absolutely critical. And if you're not following the exact protocol to doing that, you may not have good luck with them. But I'm also the reason I bring that up though is because I'm all about it makes sense to me if you can get good quality press fit type fittings and you got a system that works and it holds and it's you're not dealing with leak problems. I can't condone that because out on the job, if you can eliminate the need for having to flow nitrogen on every job and have to drag out a nitrogen tank, a set of torches, you're just adding time to the job. Where press fit's going to, if you can get press fit that fittings that work and work good for you, I can't condone that because it's good. You've sped that job up something drastically because you're not having to yank torches and a nitrogen bottle around with you. You know what I mean? So,
And let's be honest, those guys ain't doing nitrogen. I mean, we talk about it like we're in the factory, but where I'm at is not the factory. There's some guy that's 30, 40, 50, 60 years old that's tired at 5 o'clock. That's like, man, it was everything I could do to carry the torches across the yard. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, and he goes back to the truck and he looks at his tank and he's everything that you can do to make someone's job easier. I think it's money well spent as long as it holds.
I will say
I seen the truck that they have a truck like a bread truck that they have decked out to show you how these fittings work. And I don't want to say the wrong manufacturer who it was, but they held under pressure. As a matter of fact, the copper exploded before the fitting did.
Wow.
So it was like, but that's him. That's him that's mastered using that fitting, using that tool. If I tried to do it, would that happen? I don't know. I probably, I imagine that, I get it eventually, but can I do it repetitively right off the rip? I don't know.
Every single time. Yep.
You guys are right. The press fittings, they have their place, right? For like, I know a lot of commercial spaces, they're starting to completely, not allow any type of sparks to be flown, right? So that's where you'll have to get a fire permit and then you'll have to do a fire watch. So in those applications, I see where it makes sense. But I mean, other than that, I mean, I'm not saying that they're ineffective. Obviously, they're good and they're, withstand pressures. But I guess time will tell, right? As far as the effectiveness of the press fitting.
Well, let's close that. Go ahead.
I will say they make an aluminum nitrogen tank now.
They do. I have one.
That is a lifesaver.
Just a lot lighter, right?
Yep.
For anybody that has aching knees and aching hands, like Alex was talking about.
Or unsharp minds, man, because I didn't even know that they existed. What world am I living in over here? I guess I've been carrying around. It feels like cast iron.
It's like 400 pounds.
Yeah, it's like.
Well, Greg, don't the aluminum tanks, don't they have a handle around it to freeze?
Oh yeah, they got a real nice handle, comfortable handle.
Wow.
Versus just holding it by its nozzle, whenever you're moving it around.
Well, listen, guys, we're gonna have to move on here. So just before we go, though, I want to say I brought up the subject of press fits. I'm gonna tell you guys out there in the field, we're not condoning you using them because the reason why we're not condoning them using them, if that's what you would choose to do, just remember. GREE doesn't warranty line set leaks. So
they
do a really good job of protecting the compressors within the way that the systems are. So, it's up to you guys. As long as you're confident with it and you're not running around fixing leaks, it's not going to be any skin off our back. So
Right.
just
Yeah, Greg, you wanna let me check out these questions. It looks like we have a couple.
Yep. While he's looking
So-
at the questions, we'll talk about, don't forget, guys, we want you to ask questions because that's part of what drives the show. So don't forget about the ask a question icon.
Man, y'all dropped some gold nuggets already with these different tools. And, just the knowledge that y'all shared so far is stuff that I didn't know. So I'm sure it's helping some people out there. Maybe we can get some questions in here.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
Appreciate that, Alex. Well, it looks like
we want
Go
to
ahead.
make sure that we got Alex on here and make sure he learned something.
Hey, I like to learn every day, man. I like to be around different people and learn new things. I'm glad that I even got an opportunity to be here. I mean, I'm excited about it for sure.
That's what it's all about. Sharing things that we all, we assume people know, but maybe I know and you know, and there's tons of things I don't know. So
Well, the one thing we all know for sure, we can't know it all anymore.
That-
It
very
changes
true.
too fast. So,
So going
hey,
into
Seuss,
these
you want to
questions,
get
it looks
on with
like-
them questions?
Yeah, of course. So it looks like we had a few come in. It looks like a couple of them are regarding sales, so where to get the equipment from. The best thing that I could say is just go ahead and go and visit our website, GREE-comfort.com, and under the contractors tab there, you'll find a distributor near me, and that's how you'll be able to figure out, who's around your area or who's closest to your area. And the other comment it was actually a comment, was on the tool that I had mentioned. It was the AccuTrack ultrasonic leak detector. So Mike, I really appreciate that for further reference. But yeah, it looks like that's all we have for the moment. And just remember, guys, that's what we're here for. So go into the question mark icon and type in anything you got, any comments, any type of questions you guys have, and we'll be happy to answer.
All right, but I think we need to move on, and let's. We just recently have a video with Daniel and Alex with HVAC tips, going over their thoughts on the all match series AHR 2026. Let's roll that clip about the air handler excitement we got going on.
Here we are, day 2 at AHR. We are at the GREE booth here with Daniel talking about their new air handler to go with their multi-zone units.
Yeah, so we have a air handler now that goes with the multi or in a single zone application with the Vireo 12, 18, and 24K that we'll have available by spring.
Now, do you think in the future that it may be up to a 3-ton possibly with the air handler and matching with maybe a floor ceiling or a regular cassette?
So the 3-ton is kind of moving over to our Flex unitary product. So that's kind of because of the breadth of the product lineup. We kind of stick with, when we get to the larger sizes, we go with the Flex unitary, or you can even move up to the MultiPro. But on the multi-zone, like your residential multi-zone product, this particular multi-outdoor unit is 18 through 60K, 2 to 6 ports. So 18 through 24K is probably where it's going to stay for this particular air handler. Obviously, there's lots of other options. Once you get up to 3, 4, 5 ton, you can do something different. So this will be the option that you have for those like apartments that need a 12K, but you want them to be single zone because you don't want the controls to be mixed up in different apartments, right?
Well, I myself have a GREE at my home. So I installed a multi-zone in my garage, also built a room in the attic. I've had a really great experience with it, and it's worked flawlessly. I really appreciate the time, Daniel, and I hope to see you more.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed the little video there. I really appreciate Alex being on here with us. It's cool to meet you in person and then get you on the show here with us. It's cool. Greg and I, when we first started doing some of these shows and the live shows and stuff, we find it's really great to be able to have a conversation, not just stand in front of something and talk about it, but talk with somebody about something, which really drives, it makes it conversational, which is so much better. But on the note of the air handler, I have news. I apologize. It's not ready yet.
Mhm.
I'm just, every day I'm asking the factory, where's it at? Where's it at? Where's it at? So we did get some finalized pricing on it. I heard from Justin in the last week or two, and hopefully we'll get it into production soon and have some in the next few months. I would probably say around. Um, I would look for it by fall, maybe a little earlier. I hope earlier, but we'll definitely have it by fall. So I'm looking forward to that product. It's going to add another ability to the multi and the single zones Vireo, which it goes with. So, um, what did you think about it, Alex?
I thought it was good, man. You know, I've I've had a GREE in my house that's worked great for, I don't know, 6 months at least. And I like the way that y'all have packaged all the products with multi zones together. Y'all have such a wide variety of different connections that can hook up to outdoor units that it makes it seems like a lot of times when people are referring to mini splits and different type of indoor units, it always comes up to be an unusual application. And it seems like that y'all have everything covered with all the different applications. So it makes it easy to be able to go to one brand to do that. There's other brands out there that you can't. They have this or they have that, but they don't have a wide selection like y'all cover. And because of that, it makes it easier for me as a contractor, which I like easy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I
Well,
think
one thing I can really appreciate from where I sit today in the sales position is the product lineup. It does help a lot to have a good solid product lineup and all the parts and pieces, that the contractor needs. So, um, all right. So, Greg, Jesus, you had any comments on that?
No, I think any way we can, have more offerings for indoors because we got, you got a lot of applications where, the homeowner doesn't want that wall mount in their living room or, putting in a cassette and the access to it through a drywall ceiling is not always the best idea. And then the pancake ducted units, not everybody always wants those. So having a variety
Yep.
helps, whatever the customer's concerns are and the needs are for their particular application, just gives us that one more edge forward. So I agree with Alex 100% by us having a wide offering of product. We can pretty much tackle just about anything. So, and soon to come, and it's not really the show for it, but we're working toward GREE producing gas furnaces too. So,
Yeah, true. They had those at the HR show.
so we're going to be working towards being able to do dual fuel better than we've done before because we got manufacturer of the furnace and the coil to go with it. So
Yep.
I'm looking forward to that myself. So let's see where it goes.
all right, guys. Well, I think we should move on. We kind of went a little bit further, a little bit too long on the other section. So, okay, yeah. So we had a question that came in asking about the service tool. See if we could put those back up.
Yeah, just go through the contractor tab there. And you'll scroll down and you'll see, well, going too far. Went too far. Well, you can do it that way too. That's fine. Yep, right there. And view the service tools. There's a couple different places you can get to it. So the one that I was talking about, that's an older picture just because trying to get a picture of that service tool for the single zone is terrible because the glare off it is so bad because it's got this clear screen on the front. So the one that's in that picture is actually an older version, but it does exactly the same thing. The one you would get if you ordered that is actually a little newer version. So that was the one service tool I was talking about. And then the other one I was talking about was the MultiPro CE4224FC. those two are my go-tos. The multi-zone service tool, it's okay. I'm not discrediting it other than the fact that you got to plug that directly into the main board outside, which is not always easy to get to where it plugs in on that board. And then also you have to have a portable power source. So you got to have the USB power source to it as well, because it doesn't power itself. And again, that's only for data. It's not going to give you, the ability to troubleshoot like E6 and stuff like that. So if I was a guy out there in the field, that single zone will do everything you need to do. And then if you're doing MultiPro, that MultiPro tool will do wonders for you. So those are the two go-tos that I would recommend.
And Nate, if you want to back up one, or actually just scroll up on the screen, we can also hit on the distributor. So if on the top ribbon there, we were talking about where to find the distributor to go ahead and purchase your GREE system. This is where you would go to look that up, and yeah, you would just type in your.
We actually did that backwards. You go under the contractor tab up there.
Oh, okay. So it'd be under the contractor tab.
Yep. And then scroll down just a little bit, and it'll say find the distributor right there under locate. It's under contractor tools, and then
that's
search by your zip code.
So that's where you would go for that, for any sales type of things that you were looking for. And there was one more question. Well, actually, it's the same question. I just want to make sure that we did put out the correct information. Greg was asking about meters. Now, I'm not sure if he was talking about the service tool or actual meters that we had mentioned. But either way, that was the service tools. That was the service tool portion, and the meter that we had mentioned was a diode-capable meter. So, in case you were wondering, what we had said about that is a diode-capable.
Yeah, there's a ton of meters out there, multimeters that have that diode icon on there that will do a diode test. It doesn't have to be a newer meter. I've got one. I hate to show my age, but I got back when I was in trade school. So I've had it for a long time, and it is capable of doing a diode test. I'm just going to go with I've had it for a long time.
Right. We also have another comment here, going back to the RLS fitting, compression fittings. Mike is saying that he's been using RLS for the past 10 years and hasn't had an issue.
Oh, awesome.
Just a comment for us and the crowd as well. We're not saying they don't work. It's just, go ahead.
I think you just, it's like you got something so tried and true as brazing, and it's the reliability of it, and I think
well, let's be honest, Alex, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks.
Right.
Hey, people get set in their ways for sure, man.
They for sure do.
And once someone's set in their ways,
I will tell you that, if you're talking about mini splits, some people will cut off the flare connections and braze them. Not a good idea. Please don't do that. It's especially that 1/4 inch line. It's so easy to block that thing up with silver. And we run into a lot of issues with that. So,
not to mention the fact that it's hard to get fittings to match up to the GREE side of the copper. So if you got a wall mount, you got that flare off, that's a metric size refrigerant line. It does not meet up with US refrigerant lines.
and most manufacturers that are making some type of rapid lock or whatever it is, whether it's O-ring, push fit, the crimp type, whatever it is, they've got the flare fitting itself, so the other end of the flare with the flare nut built in, ready to roll. So you don't have to cut things off to make those systems work. So,
all right, guys, I think we need to move this thing along.
We're running behind.
Our next section is our chill out and stay heated. So this is where we vote whether Justin is our culprit for today, whether he needs to chill out or stay heated. So Justin, he really wanted to be here today. Calendar blocked it, emotionally committed, probably still texting us, wanted to be here, but he couldn't make it. No big deal. Since we're here, we need to put his most opinionated segment, Stay Heated. So his segment's going to be in stock versus special order debate. We've got a clip of him weighing in on part of that debate. We'll roll the clip and we'll dive deeper into the differences between in stock and special orders. So
what's this about what in production means? Can you tell me more about what you're heated about?
When I'm talking about new products, and I talk about when they're ready to order, when they're ready for production, etc., people seem to think that 3 months before that, we'll have all the pricing, all the specs ready, and that you can submit orders for it. And that's not the case. And it's also not the case that we have it sitting in the warehouse. When I talk about things being in production or ready for production, that means at that point, the factory will allow orders to be placed for that equipment. When I say have an order ready for it, to be placed for it, that doesn't mean the factory has a whole bunch of them sitting in a warehouse ready to put on a boat. It's not the case. It's never been the case. You can submit a PO, then it goes through us, then it goes to the factory. And then once the factory gets that PO, then they will gather all the materials they need to build that product, and then they will start building it. And between 30 to 45 days later, then they'll have all the stuff produced and be ready to put on a ship. And then once it's put on a ship, you'll get it here about 3 months later, depending on where it's going. And also, if the information's not on the website, submittals, brochures, manuals, and all that, probably a good chance that we haven't even got the information from the factory yet. So asking for submittals on something that's not even ready for production, it's not going to happen. So that's kind of a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. But again, mostly it's kind of geared towards some internal salespeople who ask a lot of the same questions.
enjoyed that video and the explanation versus special order and in stock. I think Justin went into great detail on what those mean, and it kind of addresses some of the most frequently asked questions by our distributors, customers. So we really hope that was helpful for you guys. So, I'll start it off. I think that he should stay heated on this section for sure.
Oh, I'm in sales. He's got to chill out.
Greg,
What you think, Greg?
I'm gonna go with stay heated.
Alex,
Stay heated.
stay heated.
Ah, you voted me down.
One sales guy versus 3 other techs.
Hey, I gotta do what I gotta do.
So we'll leave that open for a little bit.
When Daniel used to walk a different life, he'd have been right there with us. But
I would have said stay heated, but from the other side of the fence, I also, I understand the plight of needing to have things so we can sell them, right? But that being said, I have encouraged our team to different items based off of, getting some movement on those items. So, it really helps if you are truly interested, and we start getting some sales in, then we will end up stocking that item.
Right.
Well, see, I think it was not that long ago that Daniel went to China and visited the factory, and in his journey, he fell off the ship, got all washed up with salt water, and come back as a new person.
I've also learned that it's really good to just add in, you can special order something without ordering a container full. Like when I stepped into this role, everybody was under the impression you had to order a full container of whatever it was. We're happy to put things special order in small amounts on our stock orders and bring them in for you.
There you go.
All right. So I guess we should move it on to the next one.
Awesome. I'm excited about this. I got the misnomer this time.
I know
Oh.
Greg is
VRF's too
salivating on this one.
complicated for most contractors. I don't believe that is true. If you've never installed a VRF system before, I highly encourage you guys to get involved with MultiPro. Because once you've installed a few MultiPro systems, which is a single phase up to 5-ton system, with up depending on a 5-ton, we can go up to 10 indoor units. The 4-ton, I think we can do 8. Anyway, the piping with that, the setup to that is very similar to a commercial VRF system. And as a matter of fact, all of those indoor units are shared with the commercial VRF systems. So once you get, always like to start small and work my way up, right? So again, if you've never installed a a VRF system, do one of our heat pump MultiPro systems. Now, seems to be some misunderstanding there with the MultiPro because of the fact that it is considered a VRF system. It's still a heat pump. It's not a heat recovery. We don't offer heat recovery in 3-phase, meaning heat recovery, you can do one room, like one wall mount in heat mode and another wall mount in another room in cool mode. You can't do that with a heat pump system. So we don't make a heat recovery in single phase at all. You have to go 6-ton and up is when you get into actually being able to do a 3-pipe system and have heat recovery, where you could have that one room heating, one room cooling, another room heating, another room cooling. But as far as the indoor units that we use in that, they're the same. So if I'm using a cassette in a MultiPro system, a single phase VRF, I'm going to be using that same cassette if I'm doing a commercial 3-phase unit, or could use that same cassette. Same with your wall mounts, ducted units, air handlers, all of that is shared between our MultiPro line and the commercial VRF line. The only thing that changes when we go from a heat pump to heat recovery is we go to 3 pipes and we have to have a mode box. And that mode box then pipes to all your indoor units, because the mode box is what's going to actually control your flow of refrigerant for units that are in heat mode or in cooling mode, right? So I don't want to say that even the VRF they're not complicated. They can become more complex. The analogy I use is, if you walk up to a 15-ton rooftop unit, you're not really working on a 15-ton unit. You're working on 3 5-tons, because that machine's going to have 3 separate 5-ton compressors in it. So if you're working on a 5-ton package unit, there's not a whole lot of difference going from that 5-ton package unit to a 15-ton package unit, other than you're going to have more compressors, bigger fan motor, because you're still using the same fan motor for 15-ton. So you're going to be moving a lot more air, but it's still the same concept. Same with VRF world. If we get down to just the heat pump sections and those indoor units, you do a few of those, you start understanding the concept behind doing a mini VRF. Then VRF is just one step further, and it's not near as complicated as one might think. The biggest thing to really get down is the controls. And again, they're not complicated. It's just knowing how to get into those controls and do the different set points and set them for the application you're working on. They come out of the box. Those controls are already pretty well set up for you. But as James would always say, some people like to geek out on that stuff, and they'll go in there and fine tune it perfectly to the design system that they're trying to do for a particular room. What way they set up a controller for one room might be completely different the way they set the controller up for another room, because you're making it more specific to that room at that point. And the other gain we get from that, we get this question a lot with mini splits. Can I use one controller to control multiple indoor units? No, you cannot. With MultiPro, we can. You can have 4 cassettes and I can control them all with one controller. I can control up to 16 indoor units with one wired controller. You can't do this. So there's things in MultiPro that you can do that you'll never be able to do in mini splits. So
That's
I
some
think
good
it's a huge
information right there,
misnomer.
man. That's some good
Yeah.
information, Greg. You said on a 4 and a 5 ton, how many heads can you hook up to that?
On the 4-ton, I can do 8.
See, that's crazy, man. That's mind blowing to me that on a 4-ton, because well, what's the smallest head then?
I can go as low as 6K.
6 or 9?
Yep.
6.
6? So I mean, amazing.
Yep. You can go all the way down to 6K, and with MultiPro, it will run that machine if that's the only unit calling at 6K.
That's wild, because my understanding is that you have to have a certain amount for. I'm just speaking generic knowledge here, not necessarily about GREE, but my understanding was like most of them you wouldn't be able to do that, right? I mean that's something unique.
In multi-zone mini splits, that statement is true.
Yeah, because most of the time it'd have to be like 50% or something like that, or I mean you would need more, I would think, than 6,000 on a 4-ton.
Well, if James was on, he would start talking about turn down ratio, right? So it has a turn down ratio of 10%. So that's how it's able to do that low capacity output.
He would start cracking his fingers.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I'm up.
Yep.
Hey, this is what I want to talk about.
Exactly. I mean, we
No,
all know
with multi, I want to make sure that's clear. With multi-zone mini splits, that is true. You have to have a certain quantity of indoor units calling in order to get it to run at all. But when it comes to MultiPro, that's not true. So it will run. Mine does at home. I can turn on just my office unit, which is set to 6K, and it will run that outdoor unit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I've talked about this before, and I'll talk about it again. So, you got the shoulder seasons, where you don't really have the air on, you really don't have the heat on, you got the windows all open, it's beautiful weather, you don't have the pollen like you have right now. But, we got good air quality, windows are open, you're enjoying life, but it creeps up during the day and it gets fairly warm. I cannot sleep when it's hot. So I will actually go to all of my indoor units. I got 4, and I will turn them all on, turn the cooling mode. But the units that I don't want cooling, I turn them all the way up to 86 degrees Fahrenheit, so they're not going to come on. And then I close the bedroom door and the bedroom window, and I have air conditioning only in my bedroom. The rest of the units don't run. Matter of fact, I even left all the windows open, because the next morning when I get up, because the temperature drops overnight, I can just turn the air right back off. But I slept like a baby with that one little 9K running in my bedroom.
Right. Yep.
Well,
we'll absolutely do it.
Just a quick note on it being too complicated. I installed one on my house, so
if Daniel can do it, anybody can do it.
I'm just saying.
He is in sales. That was after he fell off the boat.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, guys, as much as I love talking about MultiPro, I think we need to move on. Looks like our timer has lapsed again. So
oh yeah, we're running way behind. So
we'll move on to the next section where GREE responds, and in this section, we take some comments out of our videos that are on YouTube, and talk about them live here on air. So starting out, this first video is actually the cold weather beast. How the GREE Flex achieves 100% capacity at negative 13 degrees Fahrenheit. The comment came from Rick, and he was asking, or he had commented, he said, "Is this a new model? I thought that GREE Flex didn't use communicating thermostats." He said, "Also noticed a reference to R32." So I don't know if when you guys want, Greg, you want to take a crack at that one? I
can take a crack at it. You sure?
Yep. Let's do it.
So the R32 Flex, there is some changes to it. It can still be used, ran off of a third-party 24-volt thermostat, but also you have the luxury of using GREE's controller, and you can also do it with RS-485, and they have a communicating controller with this system as well. So you got 2 options now on the R32 equipment. So
Daniel, I got a question for a sales type question. So what type of refrigerant did GREE decide to go with? As far as the whole A12 refrigerant change, which I know we spoke about it before, but I think this is a perfect time to reiterate which refrigerant we decided to go with.
Yeah, so we went with R32. It was readily available and the supply chain was already set up to handle it, and that's why we chose R32. I remember sitting down a few years ago with the engineers from the factory after the AHR show and having that discussion. And based on last summer's hiccups, I'm glad that's the direction we went. So.
Yeah, you are not lying about that, Daniel. Just some of the key points, whenever we talk about R32 from the research that I've done, we know we're getting more efficiency out of the refrigerant. We're getting more heat transfer out of the refrigerant with a lower volume inside the unit. So that pretty much, adds to the advances and, really highlights why the refrigerant R32 is, a premier refrigerant and really the smarter choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so let's move on to we have another comment on another one of our videos. So the title to that video was Understanding Flex R32 Controls and RS-485 Compatibility. Is Rick again. He's saying, is there an advantage to using RS-485? Is this a two-way communicating thermostat?
So first, I'd like to say I appreciate the fact that Rick is out there watching the videos. That's awesome.
Yep.
And making comments. We love the comments. So, as far as an advantage to using RS-485, I think Greg has had a really good point on that earlier when we were talking about it.
Yeah, let me make sure I'm clear on this first. So if you use the RS-485 controller, then you don't have to use the 24 volt, and you'll be fully communicating from the controller to the air handler to the outdoor unit. Any error codes that might pop up on the system and stuff are going to pop up on that controller. So there's a huge advantage because the error codes are displayed right there. On the air handlers, all they give you is a blinking light. And then on the outdoor unit, it'll actually give you a 2-digit error code. But you can't see that without taking the whole panel off outside to see what the actual error code is. By using the RS-485 controller, that error code is displayed right there on the controller. So there's one advantage to using the controller. But there's also whether you want to do that or not, because some people look at that controller and go, like, man, that thing is ugly. I don't want it on my living room wall. And that's okay. And I understand that. So you can use a 24 volt thermostat, third party, whatever you want to use, whether it's Honeywell, Ecobee, White Rogers, I don't really care. You can do that, but you can still do the RS-485 connections between the indoor and outdoor unit. Now, we do highly recommend that that's done in a separate thermostat wire, because if you use you can use like an 18-8 thermostat wire. If you use two of those wires as that RS-485, it'll probably function just fine. The problem is if you get a short, or if that wire gets shorted somehow, or we know how animals outside like to chew on thermostat wires and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Depends on the installer whether or not they protected it. But if you get a short there and you short into that RS-485, we're definitely going to be trashing some boards, right? So if you do that the separate cable, you don't have to worry about that. So if you're using the RS-485 controller, you have no choice. You have to run the RS-485 two-wire from the indoor unit to the outdoor unit and to the controller. But if you're using 24 volt, I still highly encourage you run that RS-485 from the indoor and outdoor, because that's still going to allow the outdoor unit and the indoor unit to be able to talk together. All your programming, everything that makes that system what it is, that program is housed in that outdoor unit board. And if you use the communication, the RS-485 communication between the indoor and outdoor, now the indoor unit information can be shared to the outdoor board to know what to do, even if it's being driven by 24 volts. It's going to know what the inlet and entering coil temperature is going to be, what the outlet coil temperature is going to be. You're giving the outdoor board more data, as we talk about in troubleshooting. That is important for being able to troubleshoot a unit. Well, that is also important for the operation of the unit. So you're going to have a better operating unit when you're using RS-45, because now the indoor and outdoor unit become communicating, and it can see the indoor unit data that it couldn't see if you strictly hook it up as 24 volt. So there's huge advantages to RS-45 with the GREE Flex.
Yeah, I like to look at it as like inputs and outputs. So, as you start adding, like for instance, if you're saying you're running a 2-wire out to the condenser, you put another input into the system, right? Versus it just being a standalone, depending on the board program and running just that program. Well, now you're adding the indoor unit to be, incorporated into the system. And then if you go to the wired controller, the 2-wired wired controller, you're also adding another input. So you're pretty much just adding inputs as you add the more components. So the more the better, obviously.
I can actually define it a little bit better. So in the R410A Flex, it has a pressure transducer in there. So in heating mode, it would see the head pressure. So it would know what the head pressure is because your indoor coil is your condenser. And in cooling mode, even though it's not communicating, right? And in cooling mode, it knows the low pressure because you're in cooling mode, your evaporator's inside, and just by that pressure transducer being housed in that outdoor unit, it's seeing that low pressure. So it knows what your evaporator temperature is. It already knows that. Okay. One step further going into R32 Flex, now we've got them same pressure transducers. So it's going to see that suction pressure in cooling mode, but it's also going to see the inlet entering temperature and the outlet leaving temperature. So now you're just given basically, if you want to look at what one means, it's giving you your superheat. It's telling that board outside how flooded we're keeping that coil, which you can't do that if you don't hook up the RS-485. It can't see that information.
Yep.
So there is advantages to using the comms between them.
So Alex, you being in the field, or at least being, maybe you're not tech doing the work, but overseeing the work. Are you seeing the transition into inverter-driven equipment being offered as an option, and like customers, looking for those types of equipment?
I think we're just headed to a place where it's going to be standard, like as basic. And I say basic efficiency, meaning that the government mandated least efficient unit. That's getting to be more and more efficient to where it's like, as the technician, you're just, they need an air conditioner or piece of equipment, and you're guiding them through the process. It's not so much that they're asking me about it, but I do offer it. We're going that direction. The technology is improving. The equipment's becoming more and more reliable. So, and some people is going to disagree with that, but I've also seen people do some shady work. You know what I mean? So I think inverter driven, I think is a really good thing. It's going to be efficient. And as technicians' knowledge catch up with it, which it becomes standard as the efficiencies go up, I think it'll be a good thing then too. I think it'll be even better. The more people that we can get educated on it, the better it'll be, I think.
Right.
Well, it's no secret that we got to reduce the power consumption on the power grid in the United States. And I foresee sometime in the near future, inverter driven is going to be the only option. That's just my own personal take on it. Because whether they're actually going full inverter or not, they are going to be a DC motor in that compressor. It is going to be ECM driven. Whether it's full-blown variable speed or just set speeds, doesn't matter. But the permanent split capacitor compressors are going to go bye-bye, in my opinion, because it's been proven that the electrically communicated motors, which is what ECM is definitely more efficient. It's already happened in furnaces.
Right.
You can't buy a furnace with a permanent split capacitor motor in it anymore because they can't meet the efficiencies. The same thing's going to happen with compressors. It's just a matter of time. So
I agree 100%. Well, here in a couple of years, you won't even be able to buy 80%er anymore. So it's kind of the way the industry's going, right? Efficiency is king.
Well, that only affects people in Texas.
Because that's all we use down here. That's right. You're right. But yeah, the only reason that I bring that up is because as far as the question to you, Alex, is I lost my train of thought here. Greg, you want to help me out on this one? Kind of just went blank. Which way was I going with this?
It's all good.
Oh, that's good. We covered a lot today, really.
Yeah, we sure did.
So, and I think Alex has given us a lot of good key points of what he sees that we don't always hear about. So,
Yeah, I
think
appreciate the
that's
other
amazing as well.
perspective from the factory side. And I think a lot of people just don't have access to either the tips, the tech, like those troubleshooting things that y'all showed, the controllers and whatnot. For most people, in my opinion, even on a contractor level, they don't know. So there's been a lot of gold nuggets here that people can grab from. I hope that they've gained as much as I have, because some of the things has been eye-opening for me too.
Right. Okay, I know which way I was going. So I was the reason I asked that question was because I was going to refer it back to what Greg was going deep into, the controls and how it does it. Well, the reason why we're explaining all this is for the techs out there, and pretty much to get a good understanding as to how these systems are doing what they're doing and how to set them up, whichever way. And that's why we go in these deep dives. And what is the difference between X, Y, and Z, setups?
Well, a good explanation to that, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything. I did a video several years ago of how inverter-driven systems work.
Right.
So if you go to YouTube and then you type in GREE Comfort and then look for the video how inverter systems work, it starts giving you a lot more explanation about what these thermistors and everything do, and how GREE does such a good job of protecting the compressor, which is what they ultimately want to do. They want to protect the compressor, but also keep the unit running as long as they possibly can to provide some sort of heat or some sort of cool before they actually let that system go down. And they really don't want it to go down and take the compressor with it. They'd much rather something else happen. So, but that video I did, and it was years ago, wasn't talking about flex because it doesn't talk about pressure transducers and stuff like that. But GREE does a great job with their systems, with all the data that they read, in protecting the compressors, and that's how they do it. And it's not, a lot of it's not only unique to GREE. Other manufacturers are doing the same thing. We just didn't, and back in my day when I first got into this trade, you didn't have those protections. You went out and you had a burnt out compressor is what you had.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. So anyway, there was a question, not really a question that came in, but a comment came in. And Nate, if you can throw that back up real quick, we want to go back to those tools again on the website. So go under the contractor tab. And then if you'll scroll down to where we were showing those tools, they'd like us to leave that up a little bit. My belief is that they're writing down what the part numbers are. At least I hope that's what they're writing down. So if you could just kind of leave that up for a few minutes and give our audience a chance to take note of those, whip out their phone and take a picture of it, however they want to do it.
All right. So looks like we're about out of time. So do we have any more other questions in there?
No new questions.
All right.
Nope, that's it.
All right. Daniel, you want to kick off what we got coming up next? Or?
Sure. So, that's what we got for today for you. We appreciate Alex being here and appreciate all of you that tuned in. So that does it for this month's Talking Comfort Live. What we've got coming up is Thursday, April 30th. Topic is flex setup and airflow. I believe, is that going to be a Tech 90, Greg?
That's a Tech 90, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
And then Wednesday, May 6th, we have topic understanding charge in an inverter-driven variable speed world. And is that a
topic?
What's that?
So that'd be a good topic. I would think that that's going to be a Talking Comfort Live because it's May 6th. That's probably the first Wednesday. So,
and then GREE Contractor Pro app is officially available on the App Store for iOS and Android. I'm excited about this one. Be sure to check it out. Bring any questions for the next Talking Comfort Live, where we're going to show how we're going to show it and how it can make your next GREE job easier. So be sure to register for the upcoming shows on our website, greecomfort.com/GREE-training, and give us a like and subscribe on YouTube, and join us next month for Talking Comfort Live. So remember,
Daniel, before we
Yeah.
go, one last time, Alex, if you want to mention your handle, I don't know if we got it at the beginning of the show, for social media.
Yeah, if y'all want to find me online, you can go anywhere basically and just look for HVAC_tips. You'll see the guy wearing the yellow shirt. That's me.
There we go. Well, we really
Thanks for
appreciate
being
you
here, Alex. We
taking
really
the
appreciate
time.
it.
I'm
I
doing
really
this.
enjoyed it. I didn't want to cut you off a while ago, but I was like, I hope you don't end it before I can say at least thank you and let me show y'all appreciation for being here.
Of course.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So
one more time, HVAC_tips.
Yeah, and you can find it Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, pretty much
all of them.
all of them.
There we go. That's awesome.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Well, that's it. So at GREE, we're by your
By
side.
your side.
By your side.
Please like or subscribe to our channel at GREE Comfort on YouTube, and head over to greecomfort.com/training for more tips and tricks and all the information you need to help you out in the field. And that was a good show.